Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get started talking about muscle contractions. I'm just going to take you guys through this really quickly. So this is the motor unit. This right here this right here is the muscle itself, okay? And then we've got this, which is the motor neuron, okay? So the impulse from the brain is running down this neuron and then stimulating the muscle to contract, okay? This part of the neuron is called the axon. I think y'all have probably learned about neuron structure in the past, but if not, then we can go over it some tomorrow if you guys are confused. But the signal is going down this way from the brain, through the nerve, to affect the muscle and make the muscle contract. Okay, so this is, I'm going to talk to you more about the sarcomere. So this is someone's arm, this is their bicep muscle. We've kind of zoomed in and taken out some of the muscle fibers and taken it down to the muscle's smallest component, which is the sarcomere. Okay, sarcomeres are what give muscles the skeletal muscles their striated look. Kind of looks like lines, as you can see right here. Alright, so the sarcomere has different parts. These purple parts right here are called the myosin filaments. They're also called the thick filaments. Then you've got the actin filaments, which are these thinner orange ones right here. Okay, those are called the thin filaments. This area here in the middle, where the purple myosin and the orange actin cross, and they're not actually that color in real life, that's just for this picture, where they cross each other, that's called the A band or the dark band. Okay, and you can see why in this picture, because in these places where actin and myosin are both present, it's darker there on a slide, which is what this is. Okay, and then right here, where all you can see is the actin, the myosin is not over this way, those are called the light bands or the I bands. And you can see why in this image. Okay, and then these are called the Z lines. They look like a Z on a lot of your pictures, more like this. Okay, and that's just a separation from one sarcomere to another. So this is a sarcomere over here, and then this is a sarcomere over here, and then this is another one over here, and they're just showing you how they connect. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this picture in a second, but for now I'm going to go to talk about the neuromuscular junction. So we talked about from that very first picture how your motor nerves are going to attach to your muscle fibers, and that's what's going to cause your muscle fibers to contract. So there's what's called an action potential, and we're not going to get too deep into that, but there's an action potential running down the neuron. This is basically like a zoomed in version of that first picture, and this is the muscle down here. This part of the muscle where the nerve touches it is called the motor end plate. Okay, so this action potential, which is basically just a change in polarity down this nerve, is transmitting down towards the muscle. Okay, these little granules in here, these red things, are called acetylcholine, abbreviated ACH. Okay, these are neurotransmitters. So these are the ones that are going to stimulate the contraction down here. So these guys are released, as you can see down here, and go across this area, this open area, which is called the synaptic cleft, and they bind right in here to these receptors. Okay, when they bind to these receptors, calcium is going to be released into the muscle fibers themselves and are going to stimulate the next reaction that I'm going to tell you about. Okay, so action potential goes down the neuron through the axon, that's this part of the nerve, and the acetylcholine is going to be released across the synaptic cleft and is going to bind to the receptors at the motor end plate, and that's going to cause calcium to be released into the muscle. Okay, now we're going to go and look at it on a sarcomere level. So we could break this muscle down into a bunch of sarcomeres. Okay, and what's going to happen to the sarcomere when that calcium is released is that calcium is going to bind to this thing called troponin, which is on the myosin. There's troponin on these purple myosins. Okay? And when that calcium binds to the troponin, it's going to cause tropomyosin to move to the side, which is going to expose binding sites for the actin. Okay? So then ATP is going to cause the actin, which it has little actin heads, okay? And those little pieces are going to come up and bind here, bind to the myosin, and pull that direction. Okay, so they're facing this way, and they're going to pull that way to where they're facing this way. So they're pulling this all inward, okay, to where this area becomes shorter because they're pulling inward. All right? And then more ATP is produced and released, and more calcium is produced and released, and this happens again and again and again to cause more and more muscle contractions. Okay, so this might be a little bit much for you guys, a little bit confusing, but we will go over it more. And if you just take notes, you can ask questions tomorrow.